deep frying a turkey. It's the only way to have turkey.
That is really good.
So quick, like 40 minutes, and it comes out like a piece of art.
My dad did it for a few years.
We do the oven ones for a while, and it never comes out like really dry. No, neither of them have kids. No.
Okay.
Pets. Yeah. Or not.
Derek's not here right now. Fire chief, nope. Lauren, nope.
If everybody's, Stevie, are we back on again? Or? Okay. Mike, are you ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay. All right, we'll get started again. Thank you. Okay, good evening. It's 6:47 PM on Monday, November 24th, 2025. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the whole meeting. Mike, we have a roll call for the committee, please.
Trustee Kutchmark.
Here.
Trustee Whitehead. Not present. Trustee Hendricks.
Here.
Trustee Naramatu.
Here.
Trustee Gilhooly. Not present. Trustee Kaluzny.
Here.
President Garvey.
Here. Thank you, Mike. We have several items up for discussion. In case anyone's here for item number 2, that item is not going to proceed tonight. This discussion concerning a revocation of a special use permit at 8863 West Ogden Avenue. The Plan Commission met Thursday night, and the petitioner, or the applicant, was granted a continuance to January, so topic number 2 will not be discussed. If anyone's sticking around just for that, I just thought I'd give you a heads up, so. The first item, we have a discussion concerning the 2026 Chicago Grit Race. This is the bike race that we've hosted in Brookfield now, and we have Chris Valdez here from Psycho Brookfield in the audience, and Deanne's going to make a presentation about the proposed event for next year and try and kind of get some feedback from the board on it and a little bit of a review from last year. So Deanne, thank you so much for the memo, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Before Chris speaks, I'm just going to go over the operations side for the race, staffing and resources that allow us to support a safe and successful race day. Sorry, thank you. As with any large event, hosting the race requires support from multiple village departments, and the following slides will outline the operational needs associated for the race. This first slide shows the fire department support. They provide on-site coverage to ensure medical services are immediately available if needed, and this includes staffing adjustments and apparatus positioning. The total cost of fire support for this year, for the 2025 race, was $2,884.30. Next is Public Works. Public Works, thank you, assists with barricades, signage, sweepers, setup, and takedown. Their role ensures that the route is properly prepared and reopened smoothly once the event concludes. These are the associated costs that include labor and equipment. You'll see the setup and breakdown staffing cost is estimated to be $26,085.48. Pre-event, there's concrete and patching required, and the cost for that is $8,801.75. Includes no parking signs, installation and removal. As I mentioned, the barricades, alley closure, traffic control devices, event setup and cleanup.
Deanne, on that, the setup cost,
Yes.
is that the right one? We have a different one?
Yes, I apologize. The staff report was adjusted later in the day and it was already pulled. I
Okay,
forgot
so
to
it's the
mention.
26,000.
Yes, the total will be about approximately 32. Sorry, yes. Those additional costs came in late in the day on Friday, so it may have not met on your report. Police department, police staffing is essential for road closures, traffic management, and general safety. As in previous years, these responsibilities require additional personnel for several hours, and the costs are outlined here. Command staff is $7,079, overtime $6,153. Many officers work extended shifts. Sick personal leave call-ins require extended hours. Limited fleet functionality and conditions added some strain. Future events may need increased staffing for the rest periods, and additional volunteers could reduce those police staffing costs. This slide shows the total combined cost to the village. We estimate it to be $51,000 using the 3 different departments' totals that they provided. This just gives us a clear picture of the overall resource commitment required each year. This final slide shows the attendance during the race times. It's a little modest. It gives us an idea of planning for staffing levels and street closures moving forward. It's a snapshot from this year's race. I have it allocated in times taken by police. 11 a.m., 3:30 p.m. is the bottom left, and then 4:30 and 8 o'clock. So you'll see the peak crowd was at 4:30 p.m. So this overview is meant to give you guys a clear picture of the village's role and the resources needed to successfully support the event. And I'm going to turn this over to Chris, who will walk through his vision for the race and what's ahead.
Thanks, Deanne. As Chris comes up, I mean, one of the things this year, I do know the crowds are a little bit smaller this year, so if we could somehow arrange it not to be 95 degrees and extremely high humidity, I mean, it actually, I know it deterred some people from coming out, and I know they took the unique step of shortening the professional races by some time, because it was extremely hot that day, and I know that's something we can't plan for. I mean, we've had some rain some years and people still came out, but it was one of those very hot days, and the route did not provide as much shade at some of the key areas. So I think those pictures showing the crowd were smaller, and with the recommended return to the old route, I was just wondering if the figures translate. You know, I have a lot of the department heads here. If the figures, so those figures were based on the route from last year, does going back to the route from the previous year change any of those figures dramatically in anyone's minds? I see Chief Curavilla back there shaking his head no.
On the police side, it'll be
Pretty,
costs.
okay.
I think the only item that D showed that'll significantly change this year is the street patching. You know, we the normal route, a couple of weeks before the event, we and I think Chris is involved in this, they walk the route and fix identify, and then we fix potholes and other inconsistencies in the pavement. Now, if it's on Grand Boulevard, obviously, it's a brand new street, so we shouldn't be doing we better not be, is Lauren in the audience? We better not be doing any paving on that street. So that will be the only item, but from a staffing perspective, I don't think
Okay.
either route is gonna have this same type of setup costs and
Okay.
carrying costs.
And obviously, because the route was different last year due to the improvements on Grand Boulevard, and they did a great job of pivoting, and that was a great race, but it's my understanding that the recommendation from the organizers of the race was to please go back to the other routes. And I'll let Chris, I don't want to steal any of your presentation, so I'll turn it over to you, Chris Valdez from Cycle Brookfield. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. As President Garber mentioned, Chris Valdez at Brookfield. I'm just going to walk through last year, or this year, I should say, July 2025. We were grateful enough to host the 3rd version of the Chicago Grit. All right. We were able to host the 3rd version of the Chicago Grid Cycle Brookfield Criterium July 23rd of this year. And as noted, there were some notable changes due to a course change, the streetscape work that was happening on Grand Boulevard, which typically we have most of the race course. The first 2 years were there. I'm just going to go through some highlights here just to give some facts and some information, what we've learned over the last few years. So the first race that was operated was 2023. The Chicago Grit, it was called Intelligentsia Cup at that time, it came to us at Cycle Brookfield over the years and said, you guys have a very charge-activated community. You have an advocacy group, that being Cycle Brookfield. You have At proximity to the city of Chicago, we believe this would be a fantastic village to host to be part of our single day host for the Chicago Grit or the Criterium Race Series. So after a few years and much negotiation, determining what a proper course would look like, we decided to bring, of course, with coordination and cooperation from the village, we decided to bring the first race to that. We'll call it the first course. We call it the B course, very likely, that's kind of our nickname for it now. We call it the B course, although it's the A course, meaning it's the first course. But in our lexicon, we're going to call it the B course. The first course on Grand Boulevard, which goes up north on Prairie, weaves around the neighborhood, passes the library, and goes southeast back down Grand Boulevard. That course was designed to be not only fast, but hit some highlights of some of our beautiful areas throughout the village, with partnerships from the Brookfield Library, fantastic viewing and cooling areas, and we thought it was a fantastic course. It returned for 2024 without many changes. We learned some operable changes as far as where do we place vendors, how do we work through volunteer crossings, everything. This is a pretty large scale event. We're shutting down streets. A few thousand people are coming to our village. People are flying in from all over the world to come into Brookfield to race for the day. So we learned quite a lot from the first year and applied those learnings to the second year on the B course. With the 2025 edition in the streetscape, we were challenged with either removing the course for the year, meaning that Brookfield may not be is no longer would be an incumbent if we were to choose to come back for 2026. As we may remember, President Garvey, you may recall this, but in 2023 or in 22 really, when this was pitched to us, Village of Burr Ridge was a hot contender to replace another race that fell off for that 10-day series. So Brookfield is trying hard to continue to hold not only a world-class event, an event that is challenging for bike racers, but also it fits very nicely into the 10-day race series. So it's quite challenging, I will tell you, to move a course, even a block, or to make one single block change. We had to, within a few months' notice, find and map a new course within Brookfield that hit a lot of the highlights. And I don't want to go through the exhaustive feature of what that is. And if everyone ever seen me late at night or early in the morning racing my bike around Brookfield, I can guarantee you it's probably because I was trying to find a good course out there. But we were able to find a course along the tracks on Burlington, hit some of our big businesses like Irish Times and Phil's along there, which were able to participate. Unfortunately for us, we did have probably the hottest day of the year for that. So as the crowd would show, I mean, honestly, I wish I wasn't out there for that long. If I could have found ways to go into the location. I think I went into Irish Times once for a cool off. I sweat through 4 or 5 T-shirts that day alone. It was quite miserable, but very, very warm day, and I think the crowds were still pretty high even in comparison. A statistic we like to use is the family fun ride. So the family fun ride is right in between the women's professional race and the men's professional race. That's where we usually see the village come out as a whole. The village comes out and participants from the community come in. I think this year we saw just about 320 plus, which is smaller than the previous years, 350, almost 400. But it's still a testament that what we saw from the village is that the village wanted this. A little bit on a personal note, 2025 came with its challenges. There was a lot of businesses that were not going to be impacted for the race course itself on along Grand Boulevard. We typically have large sponsorships from Burger Antics, Little Owl, some of the establishments that are there. Without the race course going along that, Cycle Brookfield found it to be quite a bit of a challenge to actually fundraise appropriately for this race. As some may know here, and I'm happy to share this with the public and the village staff, is that week before, I was actually unsure if we were going to be able to pay the bill for this year's race. I reached out to the community. I put a note out to not only our members, but on social media. I said, hey, if we'll gladly take any donation to bring this race on. We were seeking just over $3,000 by the week before the race. Within 18 hours, we raised about $4,500 to cover the race. So what that showed me is that the community truly liked this. I had notes. I had everything from $5 to $500 coming in from single donors saying, Chris, Cycle Brookfield, please bring this race back. This is one of the highlights of the year. So it was the warmest day of the year, but it was also a really warm feeling in my heart to know that this village, that this community community truly wanted something that is a very, very tough event to put on, obviously very costly from a village standpoint. But when we were able to raise $4,500 in 18 hours, I mean, that's a true testament to, I think, what this event brings forward. So with that, as we typically do after each race, we debrief with Chicago Grit, the directors, and they ask, what would you like to return? Is there an option here to return back? And overwhelmingly, the Chicago Grit always comes back and says, we want Brookfield back. We want to see Brookfield returning. Every year, you guys host a fantastic race. Your community is activated. We have good volunteer support, barring weather. Maybe President Garvey, you can make a call into someone, getting some no rain or lower heat, anything you can do. But we don't, there's no race date as of just yet. But the proposal is for a commitment not only from Cycle Brookfield, but from the Village of Brookfield to return for 2026. I'll pause there if there's any questions, but I do have some additional slides kind of walking through this year's course. Maybe actually I'll go here, apologies. So for public who don't know and village staff who don't know, this was this year's course. As you can see, it hugs the south end of the Burlington tracks on Burlington, runs southwest on Burlington slightly, makes a really sharp turn onto Southview, and one additional turn onto Grove and returning. This is a lap course, which over a period of time, it either can be 10 laps or 60 laps, depending on how fast you're going or the length of your race. The race, if anyone doesn't know, lasts all day. We have the amateurs like myself and my friends coming out there in the morning, to the professionals ending off the day at about 6 o'clock at night. The spectator views that we saw primarily were on Burlington, really focused in on the Irish Times Quarter, as I'm sort of effectively calling it. We did have the Prairie Avenue section sort of naturally shut down from this race course, so that lent itself to be a perfect vendor area, which was great because vendors can come in from the south end of Prairie, as there were street closures from the train grade crossing on Prairie north of the tracks. Trucks and vendors that needed to come in and throughout the day were able to enter from Prairie South, so that was a nice piece there. We had Creekside Park, which was located directly on the we'll call that like the 1 o'clock position, or at turn 3. Hosted a very nice location for volunteers to kind of come in and out. Shaded, quiet area, which we were able to host there. But the overall impact is that we did see fewer businesses. As noted, there's truly only 2 large businesses that would participate in a race like this, that being Irish Times and Phil Sports Bar. The other thing that we were able to leverage at this point as well, the right off Prairie, there's a parking lot that is, I think, village owned, and also from the funeral home, that without any cars in there, we were able to host what we call the Pro Team Expo area. So we had 3 large professional teams coming in where they were warming up. They had their tents. It lended for great visibility for these pro teams. We want exposure from the pro teams because they are what usually brings in. If you're a bike nerd like me, you're not going there to watch me and my friends race. I'm there for the day to watch the professionals really show me up and show how it's working. So this area was the best course that we can come up with, making it as fun as possible with one sharp turn, the long straight along Burlington and Southview. I do want to note that we had some host community folks that were out on Southview with hoses to cool off the racers, as they call it, kind of like a splash zone. It was about 107 degrees that day, and racing for 60 minutes at full gas, I can tell you, is very, very, very difficult to do. So those professional racers got a little bit of splash from a single house along Southview, but that was the course that we were able to have. And if anyone was out there for today, number 1, thank you for coming out. But number 2, you welcomed the sweat that we were all enjoying for the day, pro racers or just walking around. So I'm going to click on to what the
Chris, I was just going to say, you gave us previous feedback on the old route. What was the rider feedback? I'm always interested about the rider feedback from this route.
Okay, I'm going to give you the unfiltered version of it. So the unfiltered version is if you're not a good bike racer, you loved this year's route. If you're a professional, they love this course because this is more challenging. This brings more visibility. And I could even say, it's funny, out in the, after the race is over, I'm sure like many of you, I'm walking in the village, I'm, at Tischer's, at local establishments, people came up and said, Chris, this year's course was great, but last year's course, the first 2 years, offers so many visible spots to see and enjoy parts of it. Sort of the natural middle portion along Grant, and Sunnyside. If you ever stand there the first 2 years of the race, you get to see racing from all angles. It's sort of 360 immersive bike racing, which is quite amazing to watch. So, the local amateurs loved this year's course. The actual professionals who are drawing attention prefer the first 2 years. And thankfully, that was confirmed at an after party event that I was hosting, that they said the first two courses, or the first 2 years, were better.
Great.
From Cycle Brookfield's perspective, we do like the first course. This is near and dear to our heart. The B course, as we call it, because if you can see it sort of skew it slightly to the right, it looks like a B. And this course is great. As we've already noted from village staff, the Grand Boulevard streetscape is now complete. There's great viewing up and down Grand Boulevard. There's a fantastic sharp left turn onto Prairie, which is thrilling to watch because there's a great big spectator area that is there. You can, it touches some of the businesses, obviously all the businesses along Grand Boulevard, those that are on Prairie. It goes into some of our beautiful homes on Grant and Sunnyside, along Lincoln, and then passes the wonderful Brookfield Library as well, which all of those areas are really fantastic for hosting a large-scale event like this. We would continue to leverage the same areas we had in the second year hosting this, meaning that we would have the vendor expos area right along the Brookfield Ave section, just east of Prairie. So we would have some food trucks, other vendors that would want to participate there, and then we would place the Pro Expo area in the library parking lot if they're willing to participate. Of course, we'd place the Pro area there. So all this would keep everything contained within the race course and allow some spectators to not only see the race, be part of the race, see the pros enter and leave, but also really highlight the best of what we're doing along Brookfield. And I truly believe that with the streetscape that we've seen completed this year, the view and spots and some of the professional pictures that are coming out specifically out of Turn 1, the Grand Boulevard to Prairie left turn, I think would be pretty fantastic. So the proposal is, as mentioned, Chicago Grit welcomes Cycle Brookfield Criterion back for July 2026. Cycle Brookfield is looking to the village to support us in hosting the race yet again this year for the 4th year running in 2026, with the change back to the original course. And again, I can go through the benefits here. I've already spoken through. Library parking lot will be available for Family Fun Ride, the Writer Expo. We have a strong area. We're going to place the volunteer tent there. And again, just sort of the highlight at Turn 1, where we would place spectator viewing, vendor expo, and some operable street closures that would come through. With that, I'll take a pause.
Thank you. And I may be wrong, but it seems like there might, if we get another day like that, there's more shade, I think, along this route. Am I correct? Like between
I
the residents?
I will plant new trees if I need.
But I mean, I think I know the blocks of Sunnyside love having them come down.
Temporary
And,
trees, yeah.
and Grand Boulevard is a little more shaded. I
do believe it's more shaded, and really what we also saw, we have businesses that are there, and this year many of the businesses like Sage and Stone and Fill My Jar, Gosha's Coffee, we're very happy to welcome cooling stations this year. Typically, we'd have the library, which is fantastic. That second-story view of the library is a wonderful spot to be. So we do have natural cooling, I think, from the streetscape trees, but we also have businesses and establishments that were also willing to open up their doors. So it does lend, again, for better cooling if we do have another 107-degree day at 100% humidity. I think we'd be better off on the first course.
Okay. I'll open it up to board question and comment at this point. And I appreciate staff putting together the memos and the costs. And I understand the memos about more break time and stuff needed, which might increase the cost. I mean, it's a hot, long day. And I mean, I remember at the end of the night, I'm going home and Public Works is just starting to clean up. So the day goes on longer for them, and police and fire were out there all day. And with the extra heat, I'm sure the fire department was busier with just well-being checks and everything else like this. So it is a large commitment from staff. It's a large financial commitment from the village, but I think I'll leave it up to the board. We're just looking for a consensus. There's no specific, it's not a agreement or contract that we sign, but it's just Psycho Brookfield needs our commitment to give basically our streets and our staff time to this. So questions or comments from the board?
Thanks for putting it all together, both of you. I support moving forward again. It's a great event. I'm going to try not to plan my vacation during it again this year so that I can come and help. But yes, it's wonderful. I fully support doing it again.
I agree.
Agreement? Everyone's in agreement? Okay, and the new route, the going back to the old route, everyone agrees?
Yes.
All right, well, I think that's about as clear as can be. You got full support of the board. And I just want to clear up a rumor that the date has not been set because I have not booked my Michigan vacation yet. It has to happen in the middle of my Michigan vacation, so as soon as I book our dates for vacation, I'll let you know that you can
Thank
have
you, yeah.
the bike race the middle of that week, so. But thank you to Psycho Brookfield and all the volunteers. I know that day, there's, some of us was able to make it out there and help, but I mean, just to see the Women's Club and Psycho Brookfield and volunteers from so many different groups out there on that really hot days, all days, was just, that's Brookfield. That's what it is, and it was incredible, and I'm glad they want us back. That day, at the end of the night, everyone's on that high. We got a great vibe that they really enjoyed it. They want it back, but, we've talked, and we always say, let's get through the race, settle down, get a break, think about it. Do they really want to come back? Do we really want them back? And that's what tonight's presentation was about, but I'm glad they want to come back. And if I'm not mistaken, in the past, that the old route was like the second favorite on the whole tour, I think.
Correct, yeah.
And Elgin or someone beat us out because they had a hill, but.
Yeah, someone had, Dundee has this nice little run up along the river, and just makes it challenging, so. If we can build a hill, maybe that'll.
But it's nice to be the second.
To trees and hills, got it, yeah.
All right.
No, but President Garvey and Village Board, it is a testament, not only, President Garvey, if anyone doesn't know, was out there volunteering, holding a sign with the crossing, but beyond that, Women's Club, many of the organizations really make this happen. This is not a Psycho Brookfield and Village, only event. It really, truly takes the entire village to make this happen, and like I said, I'm always in awe. I think every year when I'm done, I don't want to think about the race for many, many days, but then when the community keeps coming back out and say, please bring this back, and, seeing the support that comes through is truly, truly immense, and I'm just honored to be part of the community and that they want it back as well, so.
It's a success when they ask for more. It's the same thing like the music on Grant. It's so great that night, say, can we do another one? Can we do another one? They probably get the request to do more than one a year.
Right.
We do one really well a year with the race, and we'll be good, so.
Exactly. Well,
All right.
thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
you.
Okay, for those of you that didn't hear earlier, the second item on the agenda, which was a discussion regarding a possible revocation of a special use permit at 8863 West Ogden, is going to be tabled to a future meeting. The applicant was in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission on Thursday night. Our packet came out Thursday during the day, but the Planning and Zoning Commission met Thursday night, and the applicant was granted a continuance to get legal consultation, so that's going to be scheduled in January, so we don't have a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so we'll address that at a future meeting going forward. So the next topic is a continued discussion concerning a potential rental registration ordinance. We've talked about this several times. I'm going to ask staff to kind of make a slightly updated presentation with some additional feedback from the staff, and then I will open it up to public comment and then board discussion. Just to be clear, there's going to be no vote tonight, and I anticipate another opportunity for public comment before there's any vote, but there's been a lot of staff time, board time, and public comment and public input emails and things. I appreciate people reaching out, but I'm going to turn it over to our Economic Development Coordinator, Libby Popovic, to do an updated presentation, and then I know there's general public comment at the end of the meeting, but I will open it up for public comment on this topic after Libby speaks. So, Libby, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So this board has received a comprehensive staff memo, so I won't be reviewing all of it. Part of the request was to go back and try to get some metrics so that the board can review it and the public can also digest it. Some of the items that we've already discussed is that there are approximately 7,600 housing units here in Brookfield. We estimate there's single-family residences about 6,100, with 2 to 4 units being about 959, and 5+ units roughly 847 or so. For purposes of the staff memo, what we used was a breakdown between 500 to 700 buildings that may house tenants with landlords. To pull this, we pulled certain metrics, and we did talk to our police department to pull. We started with pulling some of the landlord-tenant disputes that were of a criminal nature of the list that came through. We had about 90 between 2023 to 2025, with approximately, then we cross-referenced those to see which ones may have had either property maintenance or code enforcement. So there were about 25 of those. To date, for this year, we've processed a little over 1,000 code enforcement and property maintenance matters, and 315 of those were actually processed in adjudication, meaning that there was a complaint, a summons, and a finding before the hearing officer. We identified historically that there were some procedural gaps that contributed to lower prosecutions, and if you look at the statistics, you can see in 2023, Brookfield had about 87 matters that were processed, and about 52 of those were dismissed. So that's about 59%. And in 2024, we increased how we handled matters operationally, so we did raise that. It came to 152, with about 35 of those matters dismissed. So the trajectory is on the way upwards. We've had about 101 matters that have been adjudicated that have entities. And by entities, I mean an LLC, a trust, a corporation, an estate, and so forth. So there are about 101. And we estimate that there are about 106 tenant complaints that are related to certain units. We do have our village inspector here, Jordan Eisenberg, if you do have additional questions once I'm done. And Jordan was very instrumental in helping put together all the statistics. So as you know, in April, Jordan, as well as our village prosecutor, attended the Economic Development Commission to present some of these statistics, as well as photographs of what consistently come through the Code Enforcement Department. And then we came back again with additional statistics. The Economic Development Commission did unanimously agree that a rental registration would be needed. We disagreed and diverged on our thoughts in terms of any costs associated with that. So some of the concerns that have been raised are cost, privacy, administrative burdens with these metrics that were provided. I hope to dispel some of those and answer any further questions that we have. But with the rental registration, we are looking for an annual registration to update ownership or contact information as needed with the three options that were presented at the last board meeting, and that would be $50 per property. Option 2 is a rental registration with exterior and common area inspections every 3 years. And option 3 is the rental registration with exterior and common area inspections plus unit sampling every 3 years. As you will note in the staff memo, and after considering some of the comments that came in, staff is recommending that the in-unit inspections are only on an as-needed basis as complaints come in, and not on a regular sampling, because that seemed to be a concern. So these are the three different options that the board considered last time. Challenges that we have that both our village prosecutor has and our staff internally has without a rental registration. Enforcement limitations, as you can see statistically, strategic planning gaps that we can't do, and any lost revenue that may come from it. A well-designed registry, which is what we're advocating for, would provide Brookfield with one, accountability, interdepartmental coordination, so that is crossing between code enforcement, police, public works, all of the departments together, having enforceable, consistent, and fair standards across the board, and then any strategic interventions. Sadly, we've had a few buildings that we've had to reactively try to take care of, and where we're spending time and energy and funds and scaffolding and so forth when buildings aren't maintained. So the essential elements that are required for a good ordinance, and we did look at, you have the whole list of all of the other communities that currently either have a rental registration ordinance or they have a rental registration license that a landlord is required to have. We did talk to some of our neighbors about this, and essential elements of an ordinance that we're looking to implement would be mandatory annual registration, explicit maintenance standards, and we talked about that last time, having a set of standards similar to when we do, say, a business inspection. it's always the same standards to ensure due process. Having progressive enforcement, having a system integration, and then having actionable data outputs. So having better statistics and metrics this time next year than what we've been able to gather from historical data that we were pulling from different sources. And as you know, we pulled it from various sources. We pulled it from PD, we pulled it from our DACR system, we pulled it from our internal files, from stored files, from current files, kind of tried to put them all together. So keeping that in mind, that it was an estimate of what we've had. So part of the reason that our staff does have capacity for rental registration is because we've moved in a direction to operationally streamline our workflow. And we've done that by implementing, last year we did, 9 different zones for code enforcement. And our inspectors routinely stick to those zones in terms of going through and looking and reviewing each zone that they're assigned to on certain days, and they rotate around. And that's gone a long way for not being reactive, but being proactive. We do have a few circumstances where we've had to be reactive because it's gotten a little too far. So this is a sampling of some of the matters that our inspector is running across, our inspectors, I should say, on a annual basis. And these were all pulled from just the past year. And there are at least 100 pictures. We've only used a sampling of few of them here. So this is a sample of unsafe mechanical and electrical conditions. I'm not an inspector, but those are pretty unsafe. Jordan can speak to the details of it. Again, we have unsafe mechanical and electrical conditions. We have quite a few of those. Then here we have unsafe and mechanical and electrical conditions. This is all from one particular building. So these are not, they're not exceptions necessarily. These are some of the ones we see on a regular basis. We have some additional ones with exterior. Here's one that just recently we had to actually placard it. There were some issues there, and Jordan can speak more to that. So these are either current, pending, or they're ones that have been resolved, but within the last year. So these are substandard conditions that require oversight. And here we have some more substandard conditions requiring oversight. So these are some of the usual ones. I think the request from the board was to see some of the photographs that the Economic Development Commission looked at when they had a chance to ask the questions and talk to the inspector and also to the village prosecutor in terms of what are some of the challenges specific to Brookfield here. So here we have some additional substandard conditions requiring inspection oversight. So administrative maintenance, what we're looking for is to be able to update and store the digital data. We'd like to be able to track compliance, and that is all important for us to be able to have a streamlined workflow, which we've worked very hard to try to have that through the zones and through implementing all of the procedures, and to have some sort of coordination for re-inspections as well. Staff memo shows the revenue impact. There are some questions regarding that. And these revenue impacts are based on assuming that there's between 500 to 700 buildings that would require this. There could be less. I don't think there would be more, but this was kind of using a rough estimate. So with option 1, revenue impact would be between 25 to 50,000. Option 2, 42 to 60,000. And option 3 would be 82 to 115,000. So that's the revenue impact. But as we've talked, this is not a revenue generating operation. At best, we would probably be receiving a net zero. This is more about enforcement and safety. So we did look at program expenditures as well. So I reduced it because I don't think there's 500 to 700. We might be more on the 500 side of actual buildings. So we know there's about 1,500 units. We're trying to figure out how many buildings. So if there's about 300 buildings, program expenditure would be about 46,000, and that's between in-house inspector as well as B&F inspector, and that's part-time. And then if there's 500, program expenditure would be 78,000 and 700 at 110. So with that, staff's recommendation is to have the annual registration allows to implement that and do inspection of the common area maintenance with only interior inspections on an as-needed basis. And with that, I will open it up to questions for either myself or for our inspector.
Thank you, Libby. And with the indulgence of the board, what I like to do, like I did before, I would like to open it up to public comment where members of the public can address the village board. And I appreciate Libby being here. I appreciate Jordan being here, Deanne being here. But this is a chance for public comment. If the board members have questions of Jordan or Libby, I'd ask you to direct your comments towards the village board. And just, we've had a lot of public comment, and we like seeing people come to the meetings. We like the emails and comments that we get, and we appreciate the input. If I can help you direct your comments, I'm very liberal with this. I'll let you say whatever you want, but if I could just maybe help you direct some of your comments. I know in conversations and discussion with the board, the board is very familiar with this issue. If anyone's going to get up and tell us there's another way to do this, we can get it through water billing or other public records. The board has information. We know that's not possible. It's not just a matter of who's on the water bill or when they sign up for the water bill. Legally, we've gotten the legal advice, and it's been backed up and the added cost because the registered owner who's responsible for citations to be served for violations is not necessarily the person who owns the building or in the water bill when there's LLC. So you can get up and tell us that there's other ways to do that, but we know that's not true. So if you want to focus your comments on that, you can. But also, voluntary registration, I realize that a lot of the people who are here are the responsible housing owners. You're taking time to come here and have offered very meaningful input. And you volunteer to voluntary register, and that would be wonderful if you want to do that. But you're not the ones that are the issues. You're a very small percentage of the people, and voluntary registration would not get us the same impact as if we had a required registration. So, and I'm glad Libby cleared it up. I mean, there's some people that tend to make comments, and it's more social media and emails and things that saying this is a money grab or a tax grab by the village. This is not going to be a moneymaker for the village. We're not looking to make money. There's many things that we do as a village that cost us money that don't have a bottom line return in money. This is a possible public safety issue and public health issue. So you can offer your comments up like that. I think the board knows that the real meaning behind that. And we have a great attorney. We have great attorneys. If you want to give us the legal opinion that we can't do this, that it's invasion of people's privacies, you're free to say that. But I know the board's going to trust our attorneys and legal advice on what we can and can't do under the existing case law and law. And again, finally, I appreciate everyone that's coming out tonight, but I'd ask you to address your comments to the village board. This isn't a deposition or interrogation of staff or the inspectors. I know you've all been very polite and cooperative, and I just ask as you come up, make your comments, and when other people are making their comments, please don't talk, because the acoustics in this room are very bad, where when you're up here talking, we all listen, we give you a chance to talk, and when someone else is talking and you're talking in the back of the room, we could actually hear it up here. We want to give everyone their chance to talk. And my other thing that I tell people, I saw there was some comments, and I actually got an email, there was some concern that the scheduling of tonight was not the most convenient night. We meet the second and fourth Monday of every month, so our meetings are regularly scheduled. This happens to fall on the Monday before Thanksgiving. I understand there may be some housing providers or other people that might want to give input that couldn't be here tonight. There is not going to be a vote tonight. There's not going to be a decision tonight. There will be a chance for public comment again. If something comes before the board for a vote, I promise you that before that vote, there'll be a chance for public comment again. If there's any type of direction from the village board to put it up at a village board meeting where we could have potential ordinances in front of us, I guarantee you if I'm sitting in this chair, I will give everyone a chance to comment on that specific ordinance again before the board votes on it, if any of your colleagues couldn't make it here tonight. So, and I guarantee you the two trustees who are not here tonight are either watching live or will watch and listen to your input, just as Trustee Hendricks did. Trustee Hendricks couldn't make the last meeting, and she sat through and watched the whole meeting in public comments. So with that being said, I will open it up for a chance to address the village board. Right now, we have one more topic after this will be the budget. There'll be general public comment, but right now I'm just going to ask if anyone wants to comment on the rental registration ordinance. I'm going to go through that for now. So anyone on this side? Sir, front row.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Good evening. Sent you my prepared remarks over the weekend. Hope you had an opportunity to review them.
We get
Thank
your
you
name
for
again
time.
for the record. I know
Yeah,
you've been there several
yep.
times.
Lou Arzon, housing provider here locally in the village of Brookfield. I'm here today to state my opposition to the rental registration ordinance in its current form. And I'd like to respond to the staff memo presented today. I'm specifically going to address 5 key points made in the memo and why those claims do not justify such an ordinance. Number 1, deferred maintenance and inconsistent stewardship as justification of a new program. Staff cites 106 tenant complaints over a year and references 50 photos of isolated issues. Let's be real, that's about 2 complaints per week, and very standard and normal for a village of our size. The memo gives no severity breakdown, no trend data. We don't know if this is trending up, we don't know if it's trending down. There's no indication of how many of those complaints were from unique properties or if they were all from one of a handful of bad actors. And 50 photos of various issues are simply anecdotes. They are not proof of a systemic problem in and itself. Number 2, the village needs a registry because of administrative challenges. Staff describes gaps in record keeping, inconsistent data, and difficulty coordinating complaints. Using internal shortcomings to justify more bureaucracy is not logical. The village should prioritize fixing existing processes before expanding them. Number 3, proactive inspections, including as-needed interior entry, are needed to improve safety. But the memo provides 0 data to support this claim. As-needed inspections is undefined and completely subjective. Nothing in the memo justifies government entry into private homes. Number 4, the program is cost neutral through registration fees. But I didn't see in the analysis fees that appeared not to be accounted for, such as software fees, reinspection fees, legal processes. What happens if a tenant refuses entry? Legal resources to obtain a warrant. All of those likely will translate to higher costs, making this program financially unsustainable. Any shortfall to this program becomes a cost range to the village or will translate to higher fees for landlords and tenants. Number 5, other towns have rental programs, so Brookfield should have one too. The memo doesn't present any outcome data from these towns. Have these villages actually reduced the number of complaints? Have they reduced the number of violations? Have they reduced the number of safety issues? Copying neighboring towns' bureaucracy without proof of success is not responsible governance. The only thing that this memo has demonstrated is that truly, I acknowledge that it lacks accurate ownership records. I'll concede to that. And it needs a better channel of communication with problematic owners. A basic registration program is perhaps reasonable with some housekeeping of existing processes. But nothing in this memo, nothing justifies inspections, expanded bureaucracy, or government entry into private homes. So I will leave the board with one final question. If the village cannot demonstrate a clear safety problem or crisis in the village, cannot show that inspections improve safety outcomes, cannot show a realistic cost plan, what is the justification for adding anything beyond a basic registration program? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Who else on this side? Mark, sir? Yes, you.
Good evening. Bob Lietz again, housing provider for Brookfield. If you could please humor me, math is not my strong point. I had really good notes, but I forgot them on the printer before I left for here. So I was jotting things down. But before I get into the many, many numbers that were presented this time, I just want to circle back to the revised background information because there's a key point in there. And it starts within the first line that Brookfield has responsibility, excuse me, to ensure that properties are maintained in a safe and code-compliant condition. I think we need to stress that all properties, this should not only pertain to rental. If the goal of public health, safety, and welfare is the goal, it should apply to all. And that's an important distinction here because, and again, I'm only going to go through a very few of these quick numbers. I won't address it to who I'm asking. I'll address it at the board just so that hopefully you'll come up with the same questions that I do in terms of the data that was presented. Because if my math is right, and I'm looking at these figures that are kind of strewn all over, the part that pertains to rentals as opposed to all rent or all residential properties is at best a 2%, a 2.3%, or at worst, almost 10%. And by that I mean, again, math wasn't my strong point, but we're looking at about a 7,600 to 7,900 housing unit stocks. If we go down to the metrics in number 1, of important note there that was a 2-year stretch, about 2 years, 23 to 25. There were police records that mentioned tenant disputes, 90, but obviously that's been clarified that it was criminal. 25 of those had property maintenance and code enforcement issues. If number 2, the total code enforcement issues addressed at 1067, I assume is all residential, not just rental. If that's the case, those 25 calls that the police recorded represents a 2.3% to rentals. If I jump to number 3, the docket of 101 cases involving entities, again, I would assume that this is not just rental, that this is all residentials, those held in an LLC or a trust. I don't think that this rental registration addresses those. And my last, based on number 4, the 106 tenant complaints for the year, if we shoot back to that 1067 number from number 2, that's 10%. If the goal of this registration is to protect public health, safety, and welfare, rentals account for, depending on which numbers you want to look at, a single digit to a 10% amount. I think we need to look at all units then to address those 90% that have pretty much the same issues of finding the current owner. Thank you.
Thanks. And if you find your notes or you left your notes and there's something you want to share, you could, our email addresses are on the
Yep.
website, or you can send them to staff and they'll make sure we get them if you get home and there's something in your notes that you want to share. We appreciate the correspondence. Who else on this side? Anyone else on my right side? Anyone on my left side? Public comment? Yes, Barb?
Good evening. Barbara Dahm, 4513 Park. Both gentlemen presented a very, very good presentation, well prepared. All I can say is that I am just against any type of registration. It just doesn't make sense for just the common landlord, which is me, to have to come up and register their property when I'm not hiding anything. And I would say most of the small owners, it's probably the same way. They're not hiding anything. However, I do agree with the staff as far as trying to find ownership. There was on Facebook, somebody put a link where you could find the Brookfield map and then click on to your address or any address, and then it feeds you into Cook County. Well, I did that for both of my neighboring properties because I know the landlords don't live there. One listed on the Cook County site for their tax bill their name, but it's also the address where they don't live. So I can understand the frustration of not being able to find where they live. I have the address. You want to call me? I'll give you their address. The other one just sold in June. Now, if you don't have accurate information on this property that just sold in June for the water bill, then again, I think the procedures first need to be looked at in your own department. And you know, when you buy something on the over the computer, you put it through your credit card. It asks you for the credit card information, the name on the card. But then further on down, it wants to know whether or not the address is where it ships. It should be the same thing with their water bill. If a person wants this name, whether it's an LLC or any other person's name on it, with the existing address for it to mail, that's fine. But have another area on that application with the water bill to give a legitimate ownership, a human being name, and their address. And I don't see why that shouldn't suffice, rather than going through the inspections. It does sound like there's a small percentage. I can't interpret what some of these pictures are showing, but the one that has a stovetop, that didn't really look like anything important. I mean, it didn't look like it was full of grease or anything like that. That one right there in that lower right corner. The one up there, that's just plain junk. And as a landlord, no, I would not accept that. But it's just that I don't feel that it's really, you can justify having all of us go through this process when we're, as far as I'm concerned, we're good landlords. And yeah, you might have a problem with the tenant, but somehow or another, we do eventually weed them out. And I have not had any complaints regarding my building. And just like someone else had said on Facebook, that if you have a good tenant, you kind of keep the rent low. You don't want them to move because they are good tenants. And that's exactly what I do. The other thing I wanted to question, across the street is a 4-unit apartment building, but it went condo. And it went condo because the family couldn't sell it at the price they wanted to umpteen years ago. They wanted $200,000, they couldn't sell it for $200,000. So since they were all 2-bedroom apartments, and they were more or less, it was family. We always refer to them as brothers and sisters, because wherever they got together, and the idea was they were living in one building and they were going to take care of each other. Well, as you get older, unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but the building was for sale by the offspring. They couldn't get $200,000, so it was sold as condos for $70,000 each. So they actually got more than what they really wanted, but they sold them. 2 of them are owner occupied. The other 2 are rentals. How does that fit into your scheme? And that's no different for, there's another section pertaining to buildings that are over 6 units. Well, we've got condos, we've got big condos. Where does that fit into your scheme? Because I'm sure many of those condo units in those big buildings are rentals. And where does that fit into the scheme? This is I'm calling it a can of worms. And I think the only logical way to resolve it is to go and concentrate with the water bill and not go with this other thing. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the rental registration this side? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for the public input, the comments, the emails. And again, if there's anyone that couldn't make it tonight, there will be a future chance. Again, it'll be on our agenda going forward, depending on what the board wants. So at this point, I will open it up if the board has any questions or comments of staff or anything, or anything else they want to ask beyond the presentations that we've already been given. Again, we're not calling for a vote tonight. Afterwards, I'll look for a consensus about the next steps from the board. But any questions or comments from the board?
I had just one clarification question on number 2 and 3. I think the piece that changed in the last one was the in-unit inspections. Can you just clarify again the differences between 2 and 3? Is it the number of years for the inspection?
Chief, could you close, okay, sorry, the train was making a lot of noise. I know it might be warm, but if.
So between the
third.
number 2 and 3,
What,
the third one was based on tenant complaints. Is the second one also based on tenant complaints? Like, what would be the main
well,
differences
this was going to be
between
doing common area inspections every 3 years. So doing the rental registration with exterior and common area inspections every 3 years. The third option, which is the staff recommendation, is annual registration with common area maintenance, but interior units only for as needed and rental or tenant complaints. Initially, the recommendation was to do a sampling similar to like what Oak Park does and what some of the other municipalities do. But we took into account some of the concerns with that. When a tenant calls and complains, the inspector goes into the unit anyway. So we tweaked this to fit more for what Brookfield might need.
So the main difference between 2 and 3 is, number 2 is
Every 3
exterior
year.
every 3 years, and number
Correct.
3 is exterior and common areas every 1
Ev-
year.
Yes,
Thank you.
with interior with only as needed.
Other questions or comments from the board?
So the only thing that would trigger an interior inspection on number 3 is if a tenant requested it.
Right,
that
so for
correct?
example, we've had about 100 from last October to this October. Every single one of those, Jordan was able to go into the unit because that triggered, they allowed him to go in.
Because it was
for an
requested by
issues.
the tenant.
Correct.
And that's what we're doing already, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And wouldn't that also be for number 2? Like it would be every 3 years, but also tenant complaints? I mean,
Yeah,
anytime there's a tenant complaint, there's an inspection.
Yes, just to
Correct.
clarify, whenever anyone calls with a complaint, that triggers us following up with it, whether, for anything.
Just one question on the program expenditures. With the 2080 hours, so we're estimating this to basically be a full-time position, whether it's our in-house inspector or in-house and part-time. But this basically is a full-time position to operate this program.
Not for just this. So we're estimating 2,000 hours overall for this component of it. That would be part of our overall workflow for the transactional portion, including our vacancies, rentals, and other property maintenance and the zoning. That's including a full-time in-house inspector and part-time inspector through BNF or
I'm confused on it here. It mentions the 2080 hours. That's 40 hours a week, 52 hours, that's 2080, so that's a full-time position. So that full-time position is just for the rental registration program?
No, so 2,000 hours is what we're estimating it's going to take to implement this program initially for the year. That would be in conjunction with all of the other code enforcement and property maintenance. And we anticipate that would take our in-house inspector plus keeping on board at least 3 days out of the week, a BNF inspector as well. And that was to provide some metrics of what this might cost and how many hours it would take to implement it. So it's not hiring a separate person just for this program.
No, but it basically is a full-time position to operate this program.
Just to clarify, I think what Trustee Kessler said, you said something about 2,000 hours, it's roughly 2,080 hours dedicated per year to annual registration and common area maintenance inspections. But are you saying that's some of Jordan's existing hours with some of the other work that he's already doing?
Right, it already crosses over, some of that crosses over. So we wanted to piece out how much this would be just for that. The in-house inspections plus BNF part-time is already part of that. So we were estimating roughly how much it would take to implement that.
But I guess that's what I'm asking, so I understand this. So if we put in a rental registration program, we're estimating whether it's through Jordan on his own, a new person, BNF, whatever, that would basically be a full-time position, 2080 hours a year to operate this program.
No, it would not be one person simply hired only to implement rental registration.
not
It
what
would
I'm
be
asking.
part of.
No, but
So-
I think I think the answer is, we're estimating it'll be 2,080 hours dedicated per year.
To this
run the
program.
registration and the inspection split amongst both
Okay.
Right,
full-time staff
and part-time.
and contractual staff.
And some of it's what they're doing already, though. I
So
mean,
we're,
Some of this overlaps already.
we are not proposing adding any staff people if the
Correct.
board endorses this.
When we, I
Again, please, I asked you to please, I gave everyone a chance to talk, and I'll give you a chance to talk again. It's just, we're trying to talk, and I can hear the comments from the audience, so please.
I guess my point is, this would take 2080 hours to operate the program, whether it's Jordan's time now. If Jordan's time wasn't spent on this, could be spent on something else, right? So we're just saying we're estimating over 2,000 hours to run this program, however that's made up, whether through Jordan or contract or whatever, correct? Okay.
But again, just to clarify, I mean, Jordan is already, some of those 2,080 hours are the hours that Jordan's already spending on the,
Right.
100 calls or 100 things and other inspections that we're doing right now.
Right, managing it in Cloud Permit, in DACRA, in Mainshare, that is already part of this. Answering all the tenant complaints, that is already part of this, and all the C-click fix as well. So some of those hours, are already used up in there.
So it's not 2,080 new hours, but 2,000.
Correct, it's
Trust me,
not
I
2,000
understand your
hours for a
question and
new
your point.
person.
There is added time, and it's a large time commitment, but it's not, if we don't do something, Jordan is still going to have hours, and BNF is still going to have hours, so.
He will still have the same amount of hours, we will just spend more time trying to track it down, which is what we're doing now.
Sorry, Trustee Kittredge, did you have more?
No,
Other questions or comments from the board?
So how many hours then, I guess, is the idea is that this will be a more efficient way, right, to solve some of these issues, to proactively be inspecting. So how many hours would this be? Do you see this as saving hours in the long run? Or, like, I guess, 2080, but then how much are already existing and how much are additional?
Sure, I do see it as time-saving because we've streamlined the operations, and in the process that we have right now, a lot of it's going to depend on how many buildings do we have. And once the upfront legwork to implement it, to get everything registered, once it's in the system, similar to our vacancy registration, and similar also to the zones that we've implemented, once that's in the system, then it'll be a lot easier to manage from a transactional workflow standpoint.
I mean, if a registration starts the first year getting compliance and getting the registration, there's gonna be a lot of upfront time, but then if it's renewals or change of ownership after them, the system will be in place, and I mean,
Correct.
I mean, we can all anticipate the first year will be more labor intensive and more time intensive, but, so. Other questions? I'm sorry, Trustee Niemetz, did you have more? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. All right, so again, we have two trustees not here. We have received more information, more public input, and I guess I'm looking for direction from the board. I could do one of two things. I could put another committee of the whole up, or I could put up I could put all three ordinances up for a board session, the next board session if you want, and then I'll allow specific public comment before that, if you'd like. I'm just looking for a consensus from the board members that are here. Do you prefer another straight committee of the whole at the December 8th meeting, or put the three options up for a board vote, and then whichever one has a majority, if there is one that has a majority, but allow public comment at that board meeting before we vote or before you vote?
I guess I have a question. Oops, sorry. I have one more question before
Sure.
you go there. Is if, I mean, I don't know the speed at which we're trying to do this for a particular reason. Like, are we trying to have it, like, you want it to be a January 1st cycle, or it's part of a calendar year cycle? Or if we were to pick one of these options and it goes into play, there's a notification or communication period, and when are you thinking that it would,
Right.
like, what is the timeline in which to communicate this new process, and then when someone would need to actually
Sure.
comply?
This was envisioned for the 2026 year, and there would be the notice portion of it, which would be from January through March to advise everyone, similar to what we already did with the vacancy ordinance last year. So the plan was for the upcoming year to send out the notices and then have the registration effective March 1st, to give everyone enough time.
So again, what would the board like? You want another committee? You want me to put it up December 8th? And then if December 8th, if something, that's our last regularly scheduled meeting for the year, if you need more time.
I have one more question, sorry.
Sure.
For the second option, if you're doing an inspection and find compliance issues that have to be addressed, would you then wait another 3 years before performing another inspection, or would you?
For the
able to go
interior,
in.
yes. So if it's as is, if a tenant is calling, those are performed on an as-need basis anyway. But otherwise, yes. So that would be a limitation in if anything happens in the interim.
Trustee Hendricks, were you?
Would it make sense to have another committee of the whole for the board to hear more comment and for the board to be able to discuss and maybe come up with a direction before giving us 3 options and a vote? I feel like that might, with everyone here, that might be more productive.
I'm open to whatever, I mean,
This is our 3rd committee of the whole on this, so I don't know if we need another one.
So this is our 3rd committee of the whole. There were 2 commission meetings with EDC. EDC came forward with registration only, no fees, no inspections. That's what resulted from their 2 meetings there. We've had 3 meetings here. I'm not sure another meeting helps us much with that. It's been a tremendous amount of time for staff to spend on this and for us. To Trustee Kaluzny's point, was Trustee Kaluzny with the date, and doing this for 2026, this is upon us extremely quick. I'd be for, let's deal with this at the next meeting and call a vote one way or the other.
why don't I do this? Why don't I put up on the board agenda, put all 3 options up on the board agenda, and if at that point there's not a consensus or anything that hits a majority or close, or you guys want more time then, but know that, like that night when we have the board meeting, when that topic comes up, I will allow public comment on that topic before the board votes on anything. Is that, if more, I heard that some people couldn't make it tonight, and there was, and again, I don't like to comment too much on social media, but there's some thought that we tried to sneak this in or do something because everyone was gonna be on vacation. We knew that everyone was gonna be out. That's just simply not true. I said at the last meeting that we were gonna do it tonight or the first meeting in December. We're all here. We meet twice. We're not trying to hide anything. Our agendas are all over the place. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your email. So let's give it another chance for public comment. Let me put it up on the board agenda. We'll see what the other 2 trustees feel that night. And if you guys need more time, I'll take a motion to table that night, and we'll go from there, okay? If anyone couldn't make it tonight, you can tell them what's going on. It'll be on the agenda for, it's December 8th. December 8th, it'll be on the board agenda, which starts at 6:30, but I will allow public comment, and if anyone can't make that night, emails to the board or staff get to us. We do read them, and appreciate you coming out, okay? Thank you. The last item is a review and discussion of a resolution authorizing the adoption of the fiscal year 2027, or 2026 annual budget for the village. Our finance director, Doug Cooper, is here to make a presentation. We did have budget workshop, budget discussion. The board's had a chance to review a lot of this, but this is a presentation about the next steps and recommendation about the adoption of the budget from our finance director, Doug Cooper. So I will turn it over to Doug at this time.
Okay, so this is the second meeting that we're going to talk about a budget. This is actually the draft budget that was formulated based on our budget workshop. So a lot of what you're going to hear tonight has already been repeated, so I'm going to kind of skim through a lot of the stuff, especially stuff that pertains to 2025. But so the agenda that we're looking at is pointed up there. We're going to summarize the 2025 fiscal performance. And then we're going to summarize the 2026 budget. And then in particular, we're going to talk about the general fund, as that is the main operations budget for the village. And then there's a couple of slides that will review some of the highlights of the other funds. The general fund. The general fund, as I've noted before, that is the main fund of the village. It accounts for all the salaries, and I'm sure you're tired of hearing that. So that is the general fund. We expect to finish the year as of 12/31/2025 with a surplus in the general fund of $341,645. That is $194,000 less than what we had originally budgeted, and we've gone through those reasons before. It's a shortfall in some revenues, We can go to the next slide, and we'll talk about the transfers, and then we'll get into some of the meat of 2025. But again, the transfers, this is what funds debt service, this is what funds park projects, and this is what funds the road program. We transfer out from the general fund. My glasses on. We transfer, because it's a net, so we transfer out a specific dollar value. I don't have the total written down here, but with the $600,000 transfer in from the MFT fund, we have a net transfer out from the general fund of $1,010,000. It really is important to note that the general fund does subsidize debt service payments, and it does subsidize project. This year, the parks project and the infrastructure road will be slightly reduced as we get into the 2026 budget. You'll see that. Next slide, this is ARPA. We've gone through this before. This will be the last year you'll be subjected to looking at this slide. The total that we received was $2.5 million, and we have spent it. And I think that the village board has mandated staff to spend it in a very responsible manner. If you look at what we spent it on, you can see that it's spent on public safety and infrastructure, which is a good thing. That's really what the act was intended for, was to get the economy moving by spending it on larger projects. So I appreciate your guidance on that, and thank you very much. The next slide, this is the slide that shows the green line represents total revenues of the general fund, and the red line represents total expenditures of the general fund prior to transfers. So prior to what you're looking at on here, as Tim has pointed out before, we were operating in a deficit position. We have worked it so that over the last 6 years, we are still operating in a surplus, which is good. However, the surplus is kind of narrowing down as we get as we look at the 2026 budget. So we will start looking for other ways to expand these two lines so that revenues exceed expenditures by a little bit more. And in that way, we will help build up our fund reserve. The objective is, of course, getting to that 25% reserve level. And then this is the Brookfield property owner's tax bill. It just shows, as I said before, the partitioning of your dollar and how it gets spent. About 20%, 17% goes to the village, plus with its debt service, it works out to, it looks like 25%. So that's, but once the debt service rolls off, then we'll start going down. Okay, 2026 draft budget. We had our budget workshop back a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about a number of things. And from that, we've developed our budget for all funds. If you look at this schedule, this slide here, the top fund is, the top fund listed is the general fund. It goes all the way down through our special assessment fund. And it shows budget amount, budgeted expenditure amount prior to transfers for 2026 versus what we budgeted in 2025. And then there's a difference. And there's just a couple of things I would like to point out here, some of the larger differences. One of the main ones is, of course, the Parks Project Fund. This year, we're going to receive the OSLAD grant for the Creekside Park. We didn't do any major parks projects this current year in 2025, but in 2026 is when we start the Creekside Park. So that's why the costs have jumped up so much in that fund. And the other one I wanted to point out was in the, well, I guess just in the general fund, the fund itself does show a 2.4% increase in expenditures. We'll go through the reason why that is, but it's really a minor amount of increase in expenditures, because I think a lot of that has to do with our less expense on capitals. Because over the last 2 or 3 years, we have expended a lot of money on capitals, including upgrading the facilities, including upgrading the vehicle fleet. And we've reached a point where we can kind of take a slow down or a deep breath on that type of expenditure. And we're working with Public Works. They are working with their staffing to help develop some more programs that may occur in the future. So I think at this point in time, we're kind of set where we need to be in 2026 for capital expenditures within the general fund. So that's one of the reasons why it's a small increase. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the overall increase for all funds is a 0.43, which really is a nothing issue. It means that we really watched our budget and we watched where we're going for in 2026. The increase in personnel costs account for some of that increase. I think in one of my later slides I show it, but we did produce a COLA of 3%. We implemented a 3% COLA for staff, which is the cost of living allowance to non-bargaining unit employees. Pension costs were increased by, it's over here on one of these slides here. It was like, I can't find it in my notes here, but when I come to it, here it is. It's $359,000 our pension costs went up. So that pension cost is included in the general fund. It's our contribution to the individual pension funds. So that drove some of the increase in that cost. Also, but within the general fund itself, we also had an increase in IMRF. Our rate went from 2.5%, jumped up to 3%, which did increase some of those costs. But overall, the general fund pretty much maintained a good increase. Some of the other items on this slide are also affecting the general fund. The parks maintenance improvements. We did budget for South Maple Park. That would be for park improvements over at South Maple that we expect to have that project completed this year. And then phase 2 of the Ellert Park Field 1, which is a cooperative agreement between the Village of Brookfield, RBHS, and as well as the Babe Ruth Western Conference. One of our infrastructure projects, if you look at this, we expect to transfer from the general fund. We're looking at, right now, a $600,000 transfer to the road program. $800,000 we're going to fund through water sewer revenues, and the $600,000, so that'll bring that road program, our general local road program, up to $1.4 million. We also have a Maple Avenue road program from, I believe, I'm not sure where it starts. I know its end point is going to be 31st Street. But our share, it's a state grant. It's over, I'm not sure what the total cost is, but the village share is $500,000 basically. And that's what we pay to the state of Illinois. They're actually running this program. So if you look at those two items, we have a $2 million plus road program for 2026 budgeted. And then there's the final one on here. We have the Creekside improvements. We're going to get a grant for that, but our share of the cost for this year is going to be about $742,000. That's what we're looking at. Okay. So the Ogden Avenue and the Eight Corners TIF funds do contain some property improvement grants. The Eight Corners, we have $50,000 in PIP programs, what we call PIP. And then the Ogden Avenue, we budgeted $100,000 in PIP monies. The Grand Avenue TIF, we don't have money in there at this point in time. We're focusing on other issues within that fund. We don't have any, but I think if funds are available, we will go ahead and do that. But the major project that we have coming in that fund, as you'll see later on, is the demolition of the buildings out there, and that's going to be a large chunk of money to take those buildings down and get it ready for development. That you have to spend money to make money, as I've heard before. So that's why there's not a lot of activity going on in the downtown Grand Boulevard fund. Okay, so for the Ogden Avenue Congress Park TIF funds, there's still going to be continued activity in those. As developer interest becomes more involved, we will be spending more on consulting fees with SB Friedman. They're our TIF consultants, and they'll look at agreements that we present to them, as well as legal fees that are associated with this. But we also are continuing to work with, I think it's Civil Tech. They will be continuing the Energize Ogden Avenue project and to come to fruition. I believe that is going to hopefully end in '27. I can't remember exactly when, but that is a continuing project. We are getting reimbursed from the state of Illinois for a portion of those engineering fees, and that is recognized in that fund as a revenue. And then the big projects in the water fund are, of course, the continuing lead service line replacement project. That $24 million, that represents a 2-year and hopefully the end of the project. We're applying to those grants right now for 26 and 27. It'll probably carry over to 28, but right now, Derek has estimated the total cost to complete the lead service line replacement project to $24 million, and that's what we're going to be applying for over the next 2 years. The other IEPA loan project that we have going on is the water main replacement project, and we're working with them right now. We're submitting our loan applications. We're not sure if we're going to get the funding for that at this point in time for 2026, but we're hopeful that it will occur. So we're submitting the grant along with the 3 other loans for the lead line service replacement. So those are the big things in those funds. General fund, okay. So the general fund, we are looking at revenues, 25 million in revenues and expenditures of 24. I can read through this slide, but the net result is our change to fund balance is gonna be about 103,000. That's what we're looking at right now. So we're still in the surplus, but as you can tell, it's shrinking. We expect to finish the 2025 year at 400,000, and now we're down to 103. So we will be looking during the year at other ways to increase revenues, which we'll probably bring to the board or cut expenses, but it's not gonna be stagnant, and hopefully this number will go up by 12/31/26. This is a detail, it's in your packet, of the general fund draft budget. It shows the 2025 budget amount, the 2025 estimated amount, and the 2026 budget amount. And the percent of change in those last two columns is based on estimated 2025 versus budgeted 2026. So overall, revenue growth, we're expecting for all revenue line items to be about 3% overall. Specifically, we're looking at, the property taxes, a 3% in our general levy. In the pension funds, we levy what our actuary tells us to levy. That's what we levy. We spend the same amount. So the money coming in for the pension funds is equal to the money going out because we have to contribute those funds directly to the pension funds. So the contribution to the pension fund and the property tax levy that we get for that pension fund are net zero. So what we put in the budget is the amount that we hopefully will get and that's what the actuary is wanting us to get. So that's why those numbers are a little bit higher. But overall, for the general levies, for the village, the operating type levies, we're looking at a 3% increase. And we're gonna present the levy for the 2025 levy year at the next board meeting. We'll have our public hearing there at that point in time also, just so you know, that'll be held at the beginning. And then we'll present the levy, which has already been presented to you. For the most part, it was presented back in, it was the last meeting in October when we did the truth in taxation, so. And then the income taxes, we are budgeting a 3% increase on income taxes. And our sales taxes, we use a 4% increase rate. And on our video gaming and our places for eating tax, I think we also used a 4% rate.
And Doug, I know you explained it to the board during the budget workshop, but there's a dramatic jump in the projection for the local use tax. Can you, 36% drop, can you explain why that is again?
So yeah, basically what happened was the state, so back in 2019, the state passed a law called Level the Playing Field, which said to the internet salespeople and other salespeople, you need to levy a sales tax for any purchases that are made. And so when they set up that law to level the playing field for brick and mortar versus online sales, we received a large jump in our sales tax. This year, they made some changes to that law, and it affected the local use tax, which is basically a tax on the sale of an item generally outside the state of Illinois, where it doesn't really have a presence in the state of Illinois, but it's purchased by somebody in the state of Illinois. So some of those sales are been reclassified from a local use tax sale to a sales tax sale. And as a result of that, it changes the structure from a per capita, which is what a local use tax was based on, to an individual type point of sale. So say George is sitting at his computer and buying a whatever, he's buying something in Wisconsin. But his point of sale, he lives in Barrington. So the money from that, the tax money from that sale, because it's now been reclassified as a sales tax type or a retail sales tax, is gonna go to Barrington. Whereas before, a portion of it under the per capita type distribution went to the village of Brookfield. So we did see a major loss of that just because of the restructure that they did. The IML endorsed that, but they said, as a result of our initial changes to the sales tax back in 2019, you got a larger jump in that. So it nets out, but it did take a hit this year when that law went into effect. So we adjusted accordingly for the 2026 budget. And we're working on ways of getting it. That's why we did maintain, in my opinion, and I'm glad the board went along with it. We did maintain the grocery sales tax to help offset that loss of revenue. Otherwise, we would have lost another $50,000. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. This is the expenditure side of the slide. And this one here shows, by department, it shows our budget, our 2026 budget, our total expenditures, again, our 24,562 across all departments. The biggest jumps in the departments were the police and firefighter the police and firefighter departments, for a number of reasons. One, of course, as I mentioned before, is the increase in the pension contribution. We get like I said, we get the money from the tax levy, and then we turn around and we disperse it through these through these two departmental funds. So that's one of the reasons why it jumped. And the other reason was, I wrote it down here, I just can't see it. But there were some other reasons. They were basically all personnel related. This is the reasons these funds, oh, I know what it was. The police department, towards basically from, I don't know, maybe March through October, the police department was down 5 staff overall. Their staff declined. But then in September, October, they built those staff numbers back up. And so we now have to recognize that they got 5 new employees. And so we have to budget for those, and that's why our budget jumped up. Because the first half of 2025 is going to show a lower number in personnel, personnel costs, because they didn't have those employees. But now that we have to budget for them, that's the reason why it jumped. So it's a part contribution to the pension funds, as well as a funding of current staff.
But Doug, am I correct, there's some offset? When we were down the number of officers, there was higher overtime costs that will hopefully be reduced now because we have more full-time staff.
Right,
So I
yeah.
know there's a net growth because we have new employees, but we were paying overtime before, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And we have taken that into effect. The overtime that was paid out was extensive, but it wasn't quite as high the overtime that they paid out was only slightly, it was over budget probably by about $150,000, so. Public Works, they are high because of basically there was some equipment purchases there that were not budgeted for. And that was, one was a one-ton truck. So that's kind of what's going on with that budget there. In Recreation, they are looking at increasing their programming, but in order to increase their programming, the programming costs have to increase, and they've hired an additional staff, which you'll also see later on in this presentation. You'll see some changes that we made in there. Okay, so the next one is the transfer details. The transfers out. Do I have the thing? Slide? Thank you. So the transfers. So the total transfers out, I do have the total for this one, is 1.3 million transfers out with a $600,000 transfer in for a net of $712,000. And you'll see that the transfer to infrastructure roads is $792,000. That's what the general fund can support for road programs. And then our share of the Ellard Park project, for this year, we're transferring out $300,000. The rest of it will be made in 2027. This is just a general fund picture again of revenues. It shows the estimated 2025 revenue amount of $24 million versus the draft budget amount of $25 million, for an increase of $756 million, which we kind of went through before. We know that
756,000.
756,000, I'm sorry. Wish it was 756 million. 756,000, which is basically some of the increases within sales, income, and property taxes. That's kind of where the majority of it is. 71% of our revenues are derived from those 3 revenue streams. So, and if you look down to this slide here, you'll see that the pension taxes, we're estimating those to go up to $357,000. Our share of the village property tax levy is going to be $227,000, and it's the total. It's the increase. It's the increase. Yeah, our total levy is not that much, but our increase in the tax levy is $226. And though there's a specific numbers right there on what I estimated. So the income taxes are a 3% increase. Sales, non-home rule sales, are a 4% increase. And then our other local taxes, video gaming, utility, food, beverage, local gas tax, those are all based on a 3% increase. So I think those are relatively conservative increases. And I'm hoping that over the next year, we'll see that they'll be higher than that. They always generally tend to come in higher than my budget projections. So budget conservatively on revenue and exorbitantly on expenditures, and at the end, hopefully everything will work out to the benefit of the village. Fines and citations, $25,000 increase. That's based on discussions we've had with Mike, as far as the chief, as far as what we can expect this year. Hopefully, if some of the weather changes, we might be a little bit higher than that. Rec programs, again, we talked about the revenue. We anticipate the hiring of an additional staff to increase program revenues. It'll allow the director to focus more on some other things, program development, scholarships, not scholarships, sponsorships, and it'll allow the new staff member and the current staff to focus more individually on program development than they've been able to do up to date. That's our hope, and hopefully it will work. Grant revenues went down only because of the way grant revenues work. You get them, sometimes you don't. This year, hopefully, I budgeted at $194,000 less than what we are estimating in 2025, but hopefully with the departments working hard as they have been, they always are drawing in grants, this number will actually increase. I don't like to budget too much for grants based on an assumption that we might get it, we might not get it, because if we don't get it, then we're not gonna, then the budget will not show that. The year-end estimates won't be where we want them to be. So anything above what we have budgeted for is icing on the cake, and that will help the bottom line at the end of the year. Expenditures. We estimated 23 in 2025. We budgeted 24 in 2026 for a difference of an increase of 1.3 million. A lot of that, again, is the personnel. 71% of our costs are personnel. So if you see some fluctuations in differences between estimates and current year budget amounts, it's basically probably going to be either capital or personnel. In this case, it's going to be personnel costs and some capital costs. But pension costs went up. We are, if you'll see, we're hiring more individuals. Where our staff increase is going to be the net amount is 2.5. So it's actually going to be 3, plus we're dropping a part-time, so that's your net 2.5. And our capitals, they increased $100,000. And then our recreation budget for the additional programming costs that we might incur, that also went up. So it's all in play, and it is all, it's 1.2 million. I think it ended up being about a 6% increase. It's a very good increase, and it's not overly excessive, I think. This graph here shows again where we're at on personnel costs. I'd just like to show this so that individuals can see that almost 3/4 of the village's costs are staffing costs and pension costs, and then the rest come in with the supplies and whatever else you have on there. Recreation programming expense, that's in there. So I know you've looked at these graphs, so I won't do it. This picture I put up here mainly to show the personnel cost. Okay, so here, this is the meat of the budget here. This shows you what we have put in the budget. And I'm just gonna go through the list real quick. We have budgeted for a referendum consultant. We are looking, as you know, at possible referendums in the future, so we have already discussed with 2 consultants, and we are getting the pricing on those right now and making a decision as to where we want to go with that. So that's what that item is, and we have budgeted for it. The next item, the 3 items, are police, fire, and public works vehicles under the enterprise fleet management, except for the fire department ambulance chassis. I think that this is the total vehicles that the village is looking at for payments. The police department's picking up a couple of new vehicles under this lease. The fire department is stagnant on there. They're staying the same, and public works is staying the same. So next year, we have these meetings with the guy from enterprise like twice a year. Lauren meets with them more than that, and they kind of develop a plan as to where they want to go with the fleet. So we'll see changes in 2027, but I think for right now, we're pretty well set for 2026 vehicle costs. There's the chassis. So there's Jim's chassis for $177,000. We expect to get the body of the ambulance probably not until 2028 8. I think he was saying it's a 3-year
Yeah,
process.
for those of you that weren't at the budget workshop, it takes 3 years to get an ambulance. You start with the chassis and supply chain, and it takes 3 years to get an ambulance. So we're planning for a 3-year replacement of the ambulance, and this is the initial purchasing the chassis and then the retrofitting, so.
The next item on there are phased-in approach for the police department radios. We had a conversation about that at the budget workshop. So we put in $143,000 for the first phase of that.
Yeah, and I just, on the public end of that, we were actually awarded, or it was put in as a line item in the federal budget through Congressman Garcia's office, a grant for the police department to do radios and training and other. It was submitted as a line item, but during the budget issues with Washington, all the member initiatives or line items were removed from last year's budget. So I think it was over a $500,000 line item that we did not receive that was going to go towards these radios. But these radios are so essential. This is just they have to be replaced, and this is the first phase of it. If there's some way, Congressman Garcia's office resubmitted the member initiative. If somehow things get in order in Washington and member initiatives are approved, the board made a specific decision not to count on the grant coming through, but if it does come through, we will be able to replace all the radios and the other training that was part of that grant all at once, but we're being conservative here. If the grant doesn't come through, we still have to replace the radio, so. Sorry, Doug.
Oh, that's all right. Okay, so then the other 2 items down there, the recreation maintenance items, that would be for the Maple Park South renovations. As we know, that project will commence this year and be completed. And then the Ellert Park Field 1 renovations, that's phase 2. They started on them, or they should be starting on them in this year, and then we phase it out into next year. Then the next item on there are just IT software items that Stevie has worked with Proxit, our IT consultant, with, and developed a plan. Going to be about $260,000 in overall server replacement, software repair, maintenance, and stuff like that. It's all bundled under this IT division software. So that's what the 260 represents. The open space plan, we budgeted $40,000 for that. And then here we have our 3, see that 35,000 doesn't belong there. That actually is an error. That's probably a hangover from last slide that I had done. But the three items underneath there, those are our 3 new staff positions that we're looking at. One is the Assistant Director of Public Works. We're anticipating a March start for him or her, which would leave $116,000 in the budget. That's what our estimated cost is for that position. The Utility Maintenance 3 worker, that's in the Water Fund. We're anticipating a March start for that one also, and that would be about a $71,000 hit to the Water Fund. And then our Rec Supervisor, we're anticipating an earlier start, and that will be $72,000. Now, that might be pushed off. I think right now we're trying to figure out, we got to hire a department head, basically. So maybe we'll use him, once we hire him or her, to hire the Rec Supervisor. So that might come in, that might not be a January start, which I budgeted for. It might be a later in the spring start, which would reduce this amount, so. And then here's our reserves. We finished the year at a 24% level. That's what the $5,012,000 is. And we anticipate finishing the 2025, which is the current year, at a 23% level. We are budgeting, I don't have the number on there. It ends up being the budgeted amount for 2023 is going to be about a 23. That's what we're budgeting. Hopefully, once everything flushes through at the end of the year, 2026, we'll see that jump up to 24, 25%. We'll see what happens. But right now, I budgeted it's going to be about 23%. So that's that. Other funds. This is where you talked about the 8 corners in downtown. It should actually read 8 corners and, not downtown TIF, Ogden Avenue TIF would have the property improvement programs. Because as I said before, the downtown's not gonna have it. So that's a miss thing on there, that it should be 8 corners and Ogden. I don't want anybody to think that we're gonna be giving away TIF or PIP program monies in the downtown TIF. We just don't have the money right now, and we got other things to do. Ogden Avenue TIF, there's the Energize Ogden Avenue engineering costs. One of the things that we are all looking forward to is the branding program. We budgeted for $85,000 in the hotel motel fund. And then there's our infrastructure fund with the 26 road program and the Maple Avenue. And the water sewer fund, we are continuing our flood mitigation program. We have been consistently budgeting our mitigation program at $300,000, but it just has not been used to that level. So we lowered it to $100,000. If we have to, we can bump it back up. Generally, what happens is you see a lot of people not joining that program unless it floods. Once it starts to flood, then people will start joining that program. But we haven't had a lot of flooding over the last couple of years. So we reduced that to 100, and like I said, if we have to, we can always increase that number. Sewer work program, that's the portion that goes along with the 2026 road program. And then the leak detection survey, that's an annual program that we do, I believe, twice a year. And then the water main and the lead line service replacements, those are the costs that we're looking at estimates. It's a broad estimate. And it will be, those two programs will be funded basically, if we can do them, by the amount of the notes. The way that works is we do the work, we submit all the paperwork to the state of Illinois, they review it, and they come back to us and fund us the money. But the work is done first, and then we get a reimbursement. It's called a loan disbursement request from the state, and they give us the money after the engineering firm okays the payment to us. So we pay the bill, or actually, the bill goes before the board for the warrant approval. We hold on to the check, and then once we get paid from the state of Illinois, and the engineer approves it, then we go ahead and pay that vendor. So that's how the payment process works on that loan. And that's all I have on the budget for tonight. There will be one more chance. Anytime, if you're looking at this, I know it's a lot, and there's a lot of detail, especially in this budget here. Email me if you have any questions, specific questions that you don't have tonight. Also, you're looking at it and you're like, oh, I forgot to ask him about that. Just feel free to email me, because I know there's a lot in there. And the next budget, the final budget will be up for approval at the December, I guess it's the 8th board meeting. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Doug. And what Doug just did for the past half hour was summarize what started with weeks and months of department and staff level meetings. And we had a 3.5-hour budget workshop here in this room a couple weeks ago, a month ago, and then another hour executive session on some of the personnel matters and issues related to the budget. So tonight was more, the board has seen this before, has discussed this before, but we always like to make the public presentation after the budget workshop, which was open to the public, but we did spend a lot of time on this, and staff spent a lot of time. So questions or comments from the board? We've already talked about this quite a bit, but anything additional questions for staff?
No, thank you.
We, like I said, that 3.5-hour meeting we had that night and the executive session, we covered a lot of this already, so.
It all looks consistent with what we talked about. So, thank you.
But like I said, if you do have any questions going forward, please feel free to email me.
Yeah. And thanks for everyone for all of the work.
Yes.
And I know that's months and months of planning. Thank you.
Keep your eyes on them.
I am.
All right, Doug, thank you very much. Thanks
You're
to all the
welcome.
department heads throughout the process, and we'll put this up at the December 8th meeting. Okay, that ends the items I have up for discussion on the committee of the whole meeting. Once again, I will open up the meeting to public comment. Is there anyone on my right side that has any public comment this time? Hearing none on the right side. Anybody on my left side that has any public comment? Okay, hearing no further public comment, there is not a need to go into executive session tonight. We put a placeholder on the agenda in case we needed it, but we're not going to do an executive session tonight to the disappointment of the board. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting at 8:33 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by trustee Kaluzny, second by trustee Naramatsu. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark.
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks.
Aye.
Trustee Naramatsu.
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're adjourned at 8:33 p.m. Everybody have a nice Thanksgiving. Thanks for coming tonight.